Robservations with Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, of course, your sommelier of sci-fi and fantasy and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your evangelist of the imagination. I need that graphic. And, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I, of course, as you all know, I am Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 642. It's kind of like the answer to life, the universe, and everything, but 600 shows later. So we're at episode number 642, my God, and we are going into a monumental week. My God, think about it. There hasn't been a lot to be excited about over the last year. I did not get Justice for Han. I did not get my new James Bond movie. I didn't see the spice flow. But this week, we are getting the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Some people have seen it already, especially when they see things for the first time. We've got to see all the different opinions. All I know is that on Wednesday night at 11 p.m., it is available on the West Coast. I will be doing a special reaction show live at 3 a.m. Pacific time. I will be on live. I will take questions. We'll be doing a live show, and I'll give you my immediate feedback, a spoiler-free feedback in case you want to join me at 3 a.m., maybe a little after because it might be hard to get on to HBO Max, but we'll see. So that'll be exciting. And then on Friday, well, actually Thursday night at midnight, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier starts. So who would have thought we're getting a Justice League, a 4-hour Justice League movie, and another Avengers TV series, all within the same 24-hour span. I would say that, if anything from our geek-addled brains tells us that maybe we're moving out of the pandemic and getting some of our real lives back. Look, would I like to be in theaters to see Justice League? An IMAX theater, not going to lie. I would like that, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So, hey, and we're going to get a new version of the Ultimate Cut of Batman v Superman on May 25th. So there are things to look forward to, but clearly the Snyder Cut on a number of different levels represents a lot of things for fandom. I think first and foremost, a victory. Remember, it's a great victory for fandom and everyone who got behind seeing the Snyder Cut happen, the realization of it. Look, I really did not like Justice League at all, and I was a fan of both Man of Steel and the Ultimate Cut of Batman v Superman. And while I don't agree with everything that Zack Snyder, his take on the DC universe shows us, look, he cast Gal Gadot, he cast Ben Affleck, and he really put that. He cast Jason Momoa and, of course, Ray Price. I mean, he put those characters together. I like those characters. I like what he did. I like the choices that were made there. And I really am going to enjoy the realization of seeing the realization of his version of Justice League. And for me, it looks, as someone who has liked what he's done, the mythic nature that he brought to the DC characters, I enjoyed it. And I think it's kind of great now that we have a finished, let's call it a trilogy. I'm calling it the Man of Steel trilogy, since to me, in my mind, it's about the forging of the Superman that we eventually want and get to know. The Superman that we've seen in Batman v Superman and in Man of Steel was the embryonic. He was the Man of Steel, yes, but he has yet to become Superman. And I think the end of Justice League would bring us to that, or at least maybe if the second Justice League movie was made, the end of that journey. But so it is a victory for fandom, and I hope that fandom is not emboldened in the wrong way because of this victory. But anyway, I think we should all. I just find it fascinating that it happened. And there was an article today in the New York Times, an interview with Zack Snyder that some of you probably have already read, but I thought it was really worth sharing because, once again, the more we learn about this process, there's a lot of people that did not like the fact that people like myself or John Campea or a lot of other online movie pundits were naysayers as to whether or not the Snyder Cut existed. And in my case, working in post and having worked in post-production for the better part of 30 years, I was coming at it from a post-production standpoint. I'm like, look, there is no finished cut of this movie. There's no cut of the movie that is remotely able to be shown to anyone, nor would Zack Snyder have a cut of the film that he would feel comfortable showing in public, which he's now said. He said that very thing. And I wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't because I didn't think that, it could never exist, or that I didn't. Of course, there's a cut of the movie. I didn't need to get in and explain post-production to people, but there was no cut of the movie that was ever going to be shown to anyone. It needed a lot of work, and as I said on the show back in November of 2019, the only way that someone's ever going to finish the Snyder Cut, there are economic realities, and I think people don't quite understand outside of the business just how big those economic realities are. And the thing was, Justice League was a movie that was made, rightly or wrongly. It was finished and it was released. And it wasn't like Zack Snyder's other special editions, like his versions of Watchmen or 300 or Sucker Punch or Dawn of the Dead. It wasn't like that. This was a different case, different thing entirely. And getting a Snyder Cut version of what he had, his 4-hour cut that he had on his computer, required different contracts. There was actors that were not in the original Justice League, so there was a lot of business considerations that had to be addressed. And I was always saying, who's going to pay for that? Well, when HBO Max came on, I said on this channel in November of 2019, now it could happen because there was somebody who could pay for it. HBO Max obviously is paying for programming. Well, if they wanted to do a new version of the Snyder Cut, they could. And I always thought it was, look, in my mind, the number I had was somewhere between $50 and $100 million. That's what and it turns out it was right in the middle there. I'm sure it cost more than 70, the reported 70, but either way, HBO did, in fact, pony up the cash. It got done. As Debbie Snyder said, they had over 2,600 visual effect shots that they had to get done in 6 months. I can't stress how enormous that task was. And the work involved probably a lot of 24-hour nights. That's why I hear 70. I'm like, I bet it was close to 100. But with 4 hours, anyway, doesn't matter. No one cares. The movie's done. The economics can be left to the accountants. It really doesn't matter. It's finished, and we get to see it this week. But I wanted to jump into this article from the New York Times because I thought it was definitely worth sharing because it was great. And it's an interview with Zack Snyder, and it's by Dave Itzkoff, and it was posted today at 10 o'clock. I guess that would be East Coast time. And the title of the article is Zack Snyder's Rough and Tumble Ride with Justice League. Here is Zack Snyder goofing off at his home in Los Angeles. He said of his exit from the original Justice League, the decision to leave was 100% mine. I thought this was a great article. Let's jump into it. Dave Itzkoff says, even superhero movies can have dual identities. To most filmgoers, Justice League is just another misbegotten comic book adaptation that came and went in 2017, one in which DC heroes like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman united to battle an intergalactic foe. But to genre fans, Justice League is laden with notorious history. The director Zack Snyder exited the project during post-production, leaving it to be completed by Joss Whedon, who had come on to help rewrite it. The result was an unsatisfying attempt by Warner Brothers to kickstart its own Marvel-style franchise. Snyder occupies a singular space in the blockbuster business. After breakthrough films like Dawn of the Dead and 300, he has been both praised and pilloried for unapologetically bombastic superhero opuses like Watchmen, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. His big, brutal dust-up between these two characters, which grossed $873 million worldwide in 2016, yet still ended up a critical and commercial disappointment. The making of Justice League coincided with a tragic period in Snyder's life. His daughter Autumn died by suicide in March 2017, and his family was mourning her while he tried to finish the film. It would be understandable if Snyder had chosen to disown and disregard Justice League entirely, but he did not. His fans and cast members promoted online petitions and a hashtag release the Snyder Cut, encouraging him to put forward his own edit of the movie. Eventually, Snyder acknowledged that such a project existed, but not a finished version of the film, but a rough assembly that Warner Brothers gave him a budget of about $70 million to complete. HBO Max, which like Warner Brothers is owned by Warner Media, will release the 4-hour film now called Zack Snyder's Justice League on Thursday. What's interesting about the title Zack Snyder's Justice League from an industry standpoint, it means it's something new. It is not a recut of the original Justice League. I would assume, I haven't looked into this, but it probably has a separate copyright. So that's why the movie is called Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's a different entity, which there's a number of reasons why you do these things, but from a business perspective, very smart thing to do, which is also why it required as much money as it did, because I don't know if the contracts would stand. Imagine if it's literally a new project, you don't have the same contracts you had before. I'd be very curious. Maybe if somebody ever writes a book, Zack Snyder's done some great art books on his projects. There was a book written. There's an author who wrote a book about the story of this, but I would really like to read the story from a business perspective. How did this all get, just for my own edification, because I'm interested, how did all of this come together economically from the studio standpoint, from Warner Media standpoint, HBO Max, all that? Really fascinating. They'll never tell us that, of course, because they don't want us to know, but it would be really interesting to find out just from a producerial perspective. On a Sunday afternoon this month, Snyder, dressed in basic white t-shirt that exposed his heavily tattooed forearms, was relaxing at his home in Los Angeles as he spoke in a video interview. In mid-conversation, his 10-year-old daughter Sage barnstormed through the room to fiddle with her father's iPad settings, and he playfully shooed her away. Snyder, 55, is both self-serious and self-aware, sometimes puffing up his own accomplishments and tearing them down in the same breath. He knows that whether his Justice League cut is celebrated or panned like the original, it helps burnish his professional standing either way. Riffing on the exorbitant running time of the film, he said facetiously, "It's like The Irishman, but with action." You could say that. That's a fine review. You could also say it's the Godfather of superhero movies. That's another fine review. Most sincerely, he spoke of the strange satisfaction at getting to release the Snyder Cut and the toll it had taken on him. "It's in some ways fun to surf the wave of cultural phenomenon," he said. "In other ways, it's terrifying and horrible." He spoke further about the making of Zack Snyder's Justice League, the circumstances that led up to it, and whether audiences still want to see his grandiose take on these endearing characters. Here are edited excerpts from the conversation. This is the New York Times. "Was there a point, going back to Batman v Superman, when you realized you were on thin ice with Warner Brothers?" Zack Snyder. "There was definitely a shift in confidence that they had, and I think that kept multiplying as we went along. They had this giant IP, and their confidence, in my point of view, had eroded." "Was it a warning sign when the studio brought in Joss Whedon for rewrites?" "It was a bit of a red flag," says Zack. "They were like, we think punching up the humor and doing some more fun stuff would be great." Fun stuff, as if putting the characters. You know what? I won't editorialize. "We think punching up the humor and doing some more fun stuff will be great." I was like, I'm happy to shoot a scene if you guys have a good idea. We kicked around a bunch of different writers, and they had come in with Joss. He's a talented writer, no two ways about it. But I really didn't see the point. And then when I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I feel like they were volunteering Joss as the de facto finisher. "You left Justice League of your own volition?" "Absolutely. The decision to leave was 100% mine. I knew the fight I was in for with them, and my family needed me, and I needed them. I was in a struggle at home, and then to go to my place of work and be in a second struggle, that seemed like an outrageous thing to do to myself and my loved ones." "Did you worry about the long-term ramifications of your departure might have with your standing with Warner Brothers or your career?" "Oh, for sure. And the truth is, I was in such a place of desperation, I didn't care. You know what? Good riddance to Justice League. I was like, guys, really? You're going to give me a hard time? Let's go. I'll fight you right now. He laughs. I was not in the mood for that kind of thing. I felt we had done a great job and the movie was done. Even the 2-hour and 20-minute version the studio had knocked me down to. How did you end up with the director's cut of the film? Almost every movie I've ever made has a director's cut. When I said, okay, I'm done, I told one of the editors I work with, Carlos Castillan, to put together as best you can and give it to me. A bunch of my inner circle buddies who worked on the movie always talked about, oh, maybe we just drop a thumb drive somewhere and let a fan, he makes air quotes, find it. And I was like, that's funny, but I think it's better if it just lives as this thing that no one will ever see. I've lost my appetite for the fight. Were you dropping hints to its existence in hopes that it would eventually be released? It was more just me having fun on the social network Vero with my fans. Did I think there would ever be a version of this where fans' rallying cry got so loud that a big company like Warner Media would consider this as an option? Absolutely not. I thought maybe in 10 years there might be a DVD version where they might go, hey, maybe it's worth a couple of bucks if we spruce up the Snyder Cut. And now the same media company you clashed with on Justice League under different management is letting you put out your version of it. I appreciate that, I really do. This movie wouldn't exist if it wasn't for HBO Max. I'm eternally grateful for them. And the viewing experience is still at hugely high quality. It's really up to your TV. It's in the same aspect ratio as the movie First Cow. Those two movies share some common DNA, I think, he laughs. I really did like First Cow, actually. I would love that in a double feature. First Cow and the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Do you see the DC heroes on a grand level like characters from Wagner or Lord of the Rings? It's obvious that I take these characters and their mythology really seriously. I want them to be fully realized as characters, existing in that world. I don't think that it's cool to have fun at their expense. And there was a vision that we had, a complete universe, fully fleshed out, that we really wanted to take all the way. Was that to draw an intentional contrast with what Marvel is doing in its movies? I knew before Batman v Superman when we made Man of Steel. Marvel is doing something else. They're doing, at the highest level, this popular action comedy with a heart. And they have that nailed. An effort to duplicate that is insanity because they're so good at it. What DC had was mythology at an epic level, and we were going to take them on this amazing journey. Frankly, I was the only one saying that. Of everything that Zack Snyder said in this interview, I think this is the thing that is most important to take away. What he was doing. You know, he was trying to do something that was almost diametrically opposed to what Marvel was doing, and yet the studio, of course, wanted him to duplicate what Marvel was doing because they think it was going to translate to box office. But I think what's really important is to know that nobody in Hollywood ever made real money, lasting money, following a trend. You have to set your own path. You have to set trends. And I think, you know, if you look at the cost of the movies was exorbitantly expensive. Man of Steel cost too much, I think, at $225 million. Whatever Justice League was going to cost, even though with all those characters, $350 million. I mean, Batman v Superman, they talked about with marketing, it was $450 million. That's too much money. I mean, no matter what you're doing, and this is a studio call. This isn't a Zack Snyder call. You know, obviously a movie's budgeted, and they have a great producer in Chuck Roven who's doing these movies. But, you know, you have to set expectations. And I really think that what Warner Brothers was doing was, in a way, irresponsible. And I think that's one of the things that a great studio does is the studios and filmmakers, they have to be working synergistically to make sure that the filmmakers and the studio first are on the same page in terms of expectations of the kind of movie they're going to make and how much the movie's going to cost. Now, this is one thing. I saw this in my first job at Warner Brothers. My first industry job was working directly under Yes, I was a management trainee. I was one of the first management trainees in a program that was set up by Bill Young, who was then the senior vice president of physical production at Warner Brothers. I was brought in, young man, early 20s, and I was working underneath him. And in the department, there were 3 executive production managers, Penelope Foster, Kurt Newman, and Ron Smith, when I was there. And each one of those executive production managers would oversee, like if Warner Brothers was making 15 films at a time, each one of the executive production managers they would oversee like 5 movies. So they were overseeing the production of films for the studio. Well, I was there during the entire Bonfire of the Vanities fiasco. And listen, my job all day was just basically to walk around and give people paperwork, but I was in everyone's offices, the highest level. Bob Daly, Terry Semmel, Bruce Berman, Mark Canton, Lucy Fisher, Lisa Henson. I mean, it was a really interesting education that I had at the time. And you know what? I got pretty good at reading back or upside down, looking at everyone's desks as I lingered and talked. I learned more about movie making in the couple of years I was at Warner Brothers than any film school I could have gone to. But one of the things that was very apparent, while tentpole movies, I mean, they hadn't made Terminator 2 yet, so there's never been a $100 million movie yet made. But it was important that the filmmakers and the studio were on the same page. When they weren't, you saw things like Bonfire of the Vanities happen. And it was an interesting choice. So what Zack was saying here is incredibly important, that the studio, they're just looking over at Marvel going, hey, we have superheroes. Our superheroes should do just that. Well, Zack Snyder was doing something different. And you can't just make what Marvel's doing. You can't just make it happen. There's a reason why only Marvel has ever been able to do it. So what he says here, DC was a mythology at an epic level, and we were going to take them on this amazing journey. Frankly, I was the only one saying that. I think that was the heart of the problem with all of this. The New York Times goes on to say, the release of your Justice League brings back some painful memories, but aren't you savoring it a bit too? Only in the sense that it's 3 years later, and here I am releasing a 4-hour version of the movie. It really shows that the consumer is not wrong in a lot of ways. They can't handle anything over 2 hours. They're going to lose their minds. They were underestimated, the audience themselves. He was right. They were. How long did you want the theatrical cut of Justice League to be? My point of view is that the movie should be about 20 minutes longer each time. Batman v Superman should be 20 minutes longer than Man of Steel, and Justice League should be about 20 minutes longer than Batman v Superman. I thought the movie should be a little closer to 3 hours when I initially went into it. I know that's indulgent. The truth is there's probably about 10 Snyder cuts. There's a longer version than the 4-hour version. There's a 3-hour version, a 2-hour and 20-minute version. I think I showed the studio 2 hours and 40 minutes, and then I showed them subsequent cuts of 2 hours and 30 minutes, and 2 hours and 28 minutes, and 2 hours and 22 minutes. How did you end up with enough footage for a 4-hour movie? I do it on every movie. I tend to shoot a lot, but it's really carefully done. It's not like we're just running a second camera. Everything is very methodically thought out. When I sit down to draw the movie is different than the movie the studio wants or that anybody knows about. Why did you bring back some of your actors to shoot a new finale? I added it because this was going to be the last movie I make for the DC universe. And to have this entire cinematic universe without Batman and Joker meeting up, well, just felt weird. Jared Leto and I had a bunch of conversations about it. I'd mentioned it to Ben, and I was like, Ben, let's just do it at my house. I could shoot it in the backyard. Don't tell the studio. And I'm not going to pay you guys. I'm just going to shoot it myself. Is that what you ended up doing? No. What happened is it worked out, and we were able to do it for real. And then I called the rest of those cast members and said, hey, would you guys be down to come down to do it? The actor Ray Fisher raised complaints alleging that Whedon was abusive to him on the Justice League reshoots, which led to an investigation by Warner Media and other actors coming forward with accounts of similar experiences with Whedon. Were you aware this was happening? Not at the time, says Snyder. The last thing they wanted to do was call me, complaining about them having a hard time shooting. But in retrospect, I do feel bad that they had to go through that. I do. These guys are my friends, and they're amazing actors, and they're strong people. I want them to be taken care of and in a healthy situation. I wasn't there, so your opinion on it is probably as good as mine. Why did you end the movie with essentially a cliffhanger teasing another movie that's never going to come? The ask was for my version of the movie. I love that. Had you gotten to make further Justice League movies, what would have happened in them? It's the fall of Earth, when Superman succumbs to anti-life, and then sending Flash back in time to change one element so that it doesn't happen. And then the big battle where we beat him, when the villain Darkseid comes to Earth, in the movie that you'll never see. The armies of Earth all unite again as they did before. This time there would be aircraft carriers and special forces guys. All the armies of the world would come together, as well as Aquaman's fellow Atlanteans rising out of the ocean and the Themyscians, Wonder Woman's compatriots, coming off their island. That was our big finale. But it's a long drum roll and guitar solo to get there. Damn, I would have liked to have seen that. Since Justice League, there have been other DC movies like Aquaman and Shazam that have gotten more enthusiastic reviews and made more money. Does that sting for you that your films didn't achieve that? I couldn't be happier. It doesn't sting for me at all. Those movies are cool and they're really well made and excellent. But Batman v Superman, love it or hate it, it's probably the most mentioned movie in hashtags and references. It's the closest thing to a cult film that could exist at this level of pop culture. Am I a provocateur? A little bit. Is my job to make some pop culture piece of candy that you eat and forget about the next day? Nah. I'd rather fuck you up in a movie than make it nice and pretty for everybody. Let's be frank. There's no cult of Aquaman. Jason is a force of nature, and by all means, I want to be there. I want there to be 100 Aquaman movies because he's an awesome guy. But it's not controversial, and I have purposely, because I love it, made the movies difficult. Is it possible that the zeitgeist just didn't embrace your interpretation of these characters? It could be, and that's fine too. I don't have a dog in the hunt. When I made Watchmen, it's deconstructionalist. It's a movie that pokes holes in your heroes. And Batman v Superman is the same thing. It's meant to say, oh, Batman's drunk and taking painkillers and he's sleeping with some anonymous girl. He's a broken person. He dresses up as a bat and he goes out at night and he beats people up. He's got issues. I do think the movie came along at a point where everyone was like, oh, we don't want that Batman. We want Batman to be the warrior monk who's cool. And I personally am fine with that. When you see what Marvel is doing in its movies, do you ever think I should be doing more of that? No, not at all. I don't know how to hit a ball any different than I hit it. A director has one skill, your point of view. That's all you have. If you're trying to imitate another way of making a movie, then you're on a slippery slope. Even though the DC movies have retained your principal cast members like Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa, they're moving away from storylines that your films set up and the sense of a shared universe they established. Do you feel like they're dismantling your legacy? They are 100% moving away. They consider the theatrical cut of Justice League as canon. That's their decision. I wish them all the best, and I hope the whole thing is a giant blockbuster on top of a blockbuster on top of a blockbuster. The stars of those movies are my friends, and I want them to be prosperous, and I want people to love it. You've been making comic book adaptations for some 15 years. Are you done with that genre entirely? Do you feel you need to get away from it for a while? I don't think about it in those terms. It was nice to do Army of the Dead, a coming zombie action movie for Netflix. They were completely supportive, and it was an incredible, cathartic re-immersion into that relationship. I'm trying to put together this movie called Horse Latitudes, a super micro-budget movie that I'm going to shoot with my buddies in South America. It's about a man's journey into his past, and how does death shape you? I'm ready to make a movie like that. Am I ready to make a movie like that? I think so. Are you still planning an adaptation of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead? Fountainhead right now is on the back burner, and I don't know how that movie gets made, at least not right away. We need a less divided country and a little more liberal government to make that movie, so people don't react to it in a certain way. Meaning, if it had come out in the last few years, it would have struck the wrong tone? I think so, but we'll see. I'm in no rush. Do you think your Justice League has broader implications for the film industry and the lengths that studios will continue to go to cater to audiences? This is a social experiment. For millions of people, it's, oh, look, a giant superhero movie. That's cool. But then, for a large portion of my fans, it comes custom made. As a viewer, you have the perception more than ever that the movie was made singularly for you as you watch it. It's the culmination of this entire experience. I fought and used the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut, and it's in my world, in my computer, on my TV, in my house. I don't think anybody can quantify what that means yet. What will you do when Justice League, the Snyder Cut, is finally released? Well, I have to go to the dentist on the 18th. That's how my day is going to be. And that is it. That is the article. That was in the New York Times today. I think there's a lot we can take away from what he said. I think the narrative is pretty simple to understand. From a business standpoint, they balked. The studio, I think, had unrealistic expectations as to how much money that they were spending, because they were basing everything. Everything was what they hoped, what they wished for, not what was really going on. And again, one of the things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is it was carefully constructed over now 13 years. And when Avengers was made and it came out in 2012, you started out making Iron Man and Iron Man 2 and Thor and Captain America, and you were building to something. And each one of those films, even The Incredible Hulk over at Universal, some things worked better than others, and they were able to sort of change it up and keep it going. And with the Snyder Cut, with Justice League, you never got a Batman movie. You went from Man of Steel right into Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, where they introduced Wonder Woman as well, and Doomsday. It was a little overstuffed. There's many different. I mean, it could have been really interesting if not that I love that Wonder Woman was introduced in that film, but I think you could have made a really interesting clash of ideologies movies with Batman and Superman, the way they were portrayed in the film. But they wanted to make it a big event, sort of a pre-Justice League movie. And I think that was always the problem. And when Batman v Superman, the studio made him cut it down. And that was problematic. And I don't think the movie worked nearly as well as when you saw the film when it wasn't so cut down. And as many people remember, and people have written in, Batman v Superman it's got some really wacky stuff in it. Like the whole nightmare sequence. I mean, I'm a fan of the New Gods. I'm a fan of Kirby's Fourth World. I know what the anti-life equation is. I know what when the Earth is looking a lot like the surface of Apocalypse. But look, as I've talked about on the show before, the fan community, we represent 20% at best of the movie-going audience. Most people don't know these things, and you can't expect them to know these things. People know more than ever before because they grew up. Many of your audience grew up watching the animated shows, Justice League Unlimited, and so they know these larger characters. They know who these people are, but you can't expect everybody to. And I think that going back and watching Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, it has a lot of wackiness in it. Like Lex Luthor making logos for all the different characters. I mean, it's a pretty wacky film. So, but I think it's certainly, there's no other film like it. And whether you like Batman v Superman or not, and I like the mythic nature of the Ultimate Cut. There's a lot of good stuff in it. And I like Man of Steel, of course. So I have to say that I'm deliriously excited to see Zack Snyder's, the fully realized vision for this first Justice League movie. I really am. And I'm delighted. Any chance to go back aboard the Enterprise. But no, I think it's great. And I'm really looking forward to this. And again, the fans that stuck by it. It's going to be interesting to see. What I want to do is I want to talk to the people that were staunch supporters of the Snyder Cut. And I want to know what it's like to get it. I'd love to have maybe have some kind of a roundtable show where the staunch supporters of the Snyder Cut movement online, people that I've streamed with before and some I haven't, What do they think now that they've got it? What's it like to get how many people can say they get to see the realization of a dream? And as a film fan, when we've had time to reflect, maybe not next week, maybe not this week, but maybe a month from now, get a bunch of real supporters, come together and talk about how did it feel to finally get the Snyder Cut? How did it feel to finally see it? What did it all mean? I don't know, but it certainly would be fun to sit down and talk and do sort of a post-mortem on all of this. I think that would be a lot of fun. I'm happy as a fellow filmmaker that Zack Snyder was able to get this done. I'm happy for the fan community that it was realized. I'm happy that HBO Max stepped up to the plate and did this. And I think that there's a lesson, if it does drive subscribers and it is considered creatively fulfilling, I wonder what lesson that says to the studio regimes moving forward. It's going to be very interesting to see where all of this goes. And I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait to read all the industry pundits weigh in on this and what the industry itself has to say. So we shall see. Now let's see what you guys have to say. Beginning, I got a letter from JT. Hey, Rob, thank you for reading my previous letter about the High Republic. That was awesome. Well, you're welcome. I love this community. I'm a little behind on Robservations episodes, so I'm not sure if you've talked about this yet. I was wondering what you thought of Coming to America. I was pretty disappointed, to be honest. Also, I couldn't be more excited for the Snyder Cut and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Thursday and Friday. What an amazing time to be a comic book fan. Have a good day. Well, JT, like I was fond of saying even back on the Collider Heroes days, we live in wondrous times. Growing up, I can't imagine. I don't think I could ever, if I went back in time and found my 12-year-old self and got to tell my 12-year-old self, bruh, you are not going to fucking believe the shit they're going to make in the next 40 years. I mean, my 12-year-old self would have been like, come on, why are you pulling my leg? No, I'm serious, dude. Wait till you see what you're going to be able to get. The action figures you're going to get. The video games you're going to be able to get. The movies they're going to make. Can you believe there's going to be Avengers and a Justice League movie? Of course, my 12-year-old self would have said, so are you going to get a Justice League versus Avengers movie? Well, I don't know about that, but you know what? Where do you go from there? I could see Kevin Feige organizing, engineering somehow an Avengers versus Justice League movie. I wouldn't put it past anyone. But it's a pretty great time to be alive, JT. As for Coming to America, I understand it was a kindler, gentler movie. I understand they addressed a lot of the moment topics. I didn't love the film, but I'll tell you one thing. I did enjoy watching it. I thought everybody looked like they were having a really good time. It put a smile on my face. Did it change my life? No. Did I think it was great? No. But I did enjoy my time watching it. And I thought it was a fun, vibrant movie that had a lot of clever things in it. Was it as funny as I hoped it would be? No. But it seemed like everybody making it was having a really good time. And I think there's something to be said for that. So, yeah. Let's see. This one comes from William Everall again. Hello, Rob. You talk about imagination a lot, and quite frankly, we're losing that in the world. I'm not saying all people, but when I grew up, I had the original Star Wars toys, as many as I could get. We were poor, and never once did I play Star Wars. So what did I do with these figures? I made my own superhero team, picturing them as other people. I had an entire story arc I played before my brother. I would rather do that than watch TV. Later on, I wanted to draw my own comics. My characters are pretty underdeveloped and my art was terrible, bubbles for hands, etc. I kept drawing, though, and found I was improving. I could draw the human form and buildings by the time I was 14. My simple stories became epics that no one but me and my friends enjoyed. I just loved drawing, painting, sculpting, anything I learned. My dream was to become an animator because I thought there was no hope for superhero films due to the level of special effects at the time. But then a girl came along, and I was young and dumb, and my goals changed just to be with her. As with all young, dumb relationships based on no real combined interests other than sex, it didn't work out after a few years, but after the wallowing in grief, I got over it, as it always does. I started an ink and watercolor graphic novel. It cost me $5,000 to self-publish. I printed 500 copies. I lost a lot of money, but I took it down to comic book stores to sell it. Most didn't sell. I sold about 300 copies, but just ended up giving away the rest to friends who wanted to read it. After that, I lost the rest, but if you ever find a copy of the Schauspieler, that's me. I continued honing my craft, but now it was the 90s, a very bad time for comics. I submitted some work to DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse. Marvel offered me a freelance job doing backup inks in Marvel Comics Presents. I thought this might be a great way to enter the business. Well, little did I know I wouldn't get any credit. I was paid to touch up some other guy's work, or in some instances, redraw it. This letter has a point, though. I think what you're doing with the fan independent films is great. You need to wrap it up, though. I know. It's much easier to submit something to the public. You just have to put work into it. It's hard, but if you enjoy it, you don't have to be a child prodigy. I consider myself a trained artist. I practiced, and many times it seemed I was going nowhere. Then I'd have a breakthrough. So to all the Post-Geek singularity, use these things to grow your imagination. P.S. Our computer console game should be out in 11,983, thanks to my marketing person, who's my brother. Have a great day, all. William. What a great letter, man. Look, I'm a big proponent of creative endeavor for its own sake. I know there's a lot of people who dream of becoming famous or rich or, it's a pipe dream. It's also, hey, it happens. You can get lucky, and a lot of the time it's just nose to the grindstone work. I work on films and do the things I do because I wanted to do it my whole life, and I actually love doing it. I'm never happier than when I'm editing something or if I'm on set directing something. I love it. I do it for its own sake, and I think I've always done things like build models or done creative things since I was a kid. And at first I didn't think that I would ever could turn it into a profession, but you can, and I have been able to, so that's been good. But I think doing something creative is its own reward, just like I think education is its own reward. The more you learn, the better off you're going to be, not because of anybody else, but just yourself. You'll find that the more you know makes the world more interesting, people more interesting. Everything is more interesting when you know something about it. And that's what I've found, that learning, creating, doing things, it just makes the world a better place for you. There's more interesting things for you. When you get depressed or things might not be working out the way you want them to, when you make something that's yours, whether you're writing a short story or, knitting a scarf or whatever, you can control it. And then at the end of the day, you might have something that you can have for yourself, or you have it and share it with other people. I think there's definitely something, it doesn't matter what it is. Like I said, I love meeting people, even if I always use horticulture as an example. Like if you breed, can you say breed? If you raise orchids. I keep thinking about the orchid thief, but if you raise orchids, I don't know anything about flowers or horticulture, but I love listening to passionate people talk about things that they love. So if I met somebody who wanted to tell me about their orchid business, I'm all in. I'd listen to it for hours, just because I find it interesting. And every person you meet, you just never know when you're going to learn something from someone else's story. You might not think you'd be interested in it, but I've found that most people have something interesting to convey to you. I think they do. I really believe that. And I know I always say it every day, but I believe it. Every single person. Some of those things might be not as significant as others, but I do think that everybody has something to offer and something to teach you. This is a letter that I quite enjoyed, to be honest. It's from Scott Richardson. Scott says, "Hi, Rob. I have had a doozy of a couple of weeks. Some of my favorite childhood joys have been labeled as problematic, with the explicit lyrics parental advisory label being slapped on the Muppets. I've questioned my enjoyment of Fozzie performing a musical number with Harry Belafonte. The antics of an amorous skunk pursuing a cat under the false assumption that she is also a skunk has drawn criticisms of emboldening patriarchal sexual assault. I could go on for some time regarding my, let's say, reaction to these newly minted perspectives, but I wanted to share the first time that I was surrounded by an audience that, in my opinion, ignorantly didn't get it. The year was 1999. I was 21, working a split shift at a restaurant, and I had a few hours to kill between lunch and dinner. I figured I would go see South Park, bigger, longer, uncut, on my break. I hadn't really paid attention to South Park before the movie came out. I was aware of some of the controversies surrounding the show, and the movie was certainly attracting its share of pearl clutching. I stepped into the lobby of the local cinema on a Saturday and wasn't really surprised by the sea of children and parents lining up for an afternoon matinee. It wasn't until I walked into the auditorium that I was taken aback that many a family were obviously there for the R-rated animated comedy. The lights dimmed, and after the trailers, the Paramount Classic logo was superseded by an animated Colorado mountain. The opening song, Quiet Mountain Town, began, and everyone began to relax for about 4 minutes. I noticed a few spines straighten as the boys settled into their seats for the film in a film, Asses of Fire. Well, after the opening bars of Uncle Fucker, parents began to hurriedly shield and usher their children out of the theater. They say you should never yell fire in a crowded theater. I would like to make an amendment. Never sing Uncle Fucker in a theater crowded with 10-year-olds. As the on-screen animated crowd expressed their disgust, angrily leaving the theater, the real-life crowd around me was doing the same thing. It was the first fully immersive cinematic experience that I've ever enjoyed. I wish I could have followed them to see the theater manager's response to a torch-carrying angry mob of parents, but I was laughing too hard at the vulgarity that uniformed parents hadn't bothered to research. They hadn't even looked at the poster, as there was clearly a rated R in the box on that poster. I thoroughly enjoyed the film and hummed a lot of the songs during the second half of my shift. All of my guests thought I was the cheeriest server they'd ever enjoyed. The money was good that night, but the afternoon I'd enjoyed was priceless. The reason I recount that hilarity is that 22 years later, people seem to be doing the same thing. They misunderstood the concepts. They vilify the creators, and they admonish the audience in on the joke. Pepe Le Pew is a skunk. The lady cat was, well, a cat. No animal wants to hang out with a skunk unless they too are a skunk. That's the joke. It isn't an animated guide to sexual assault, nor does it encourage it. Maybe I'm being too precious with my childhood darlings of a foul-smelling French rodent or the troupe of felt puppets singing songs from around the world. I just figured that, in the age of the internet, context would be easily accessible and the potential insensitivity of that art could be directed at an age-appropriate audience. But what do you expect? Like Terrence and Phillip, I'm a Canadian. Have a good one, Rob. Regards to the Post-Geek Singularity. Well, Scott, what a fantastic letter. Look, I talk about cancel culture on this show a lot. And I think that, I wonder, with a lot of what goes on with every single, it seems to me that every single instance of anything that makes anyone uncomfortable, and we're talking about a spectrum of things. Like, do I want anyone to be harmed? No. Do I want anyone to be victimized? not at all. I've known people that have been in very serious, horrible ways. I don't want that to continue. But I always wonder, what is the end result of getting rid of anything that people find offensive? Where's that supposed to take us? And I always wonder, okay, whatever your offense is, whatever your big topic of offense is, where do you think we're going to be if you achieve what it is that you want? That you don't want to be offended by anything. I mean, how is that going to happen? We human beings have proven over the centuries we're horrible. We're horrible, horrible people. Now, do we want to have a world, we want to live in a world that's better? We do. And I think human beings have been striving since we came down out of the trees to make a better world. We're not there yet. We're a long way from there. We are prisoners of our own biology. We are prisoners of our society. We're prisoners of our DNA. We're prisoners of a lot of things, and I think part of life is to make our world a better place. But I don't understand this idea that the world is supposed to be a safe place, a place where there's no offense at all, a place where you'll never feel any discomfort, ideological or physical. I don't understand where that's coming from. I also don't understand the fact that, you know, when you're looking at humorous things, to turn around, like you said, Scott, and make everything about the very worst thing in the world. I just don't get that either. And I understand. I mean, we now, I feel that we've become rather, well, at least here in the United States, we've become more interested in looking into these kinds of things and pointing fingers, and rather than looking out and creating things that are new. I felt that in our world, in our lifetimes, a lot of our bad ideas and the bad treatment that people have received has been evolving out of our civilization. We have been getting better. We have become more aware. We have been doing things to alleviate these kinds of crimes. And I thought naturally we were progressing. These things were taking care of themselves, because ultimately a society, our society, when it's allowed to grow and flourish, and when there is thought and there is conversation and there is healthy debate, and we are putting things up for scrutiny, bad ideas evolve out of the culture. But now we've decided, in the midst of this very beneficial evolution, we've decided to stop that and point our fingers and become victims and scream and yell and bitch and moan and complain and demand that our entire society suddenly be turned into something that's hermetically sealed and perfect, that nobody should ever feel offense of any kind. I don't get it. I don't understand. We live in a world where you can have, my mom's brother was 29 years old. He was golfing. He was practicing putting on a golf course. He was on the putting green. He had a brain aneurysm and died. When stuff like that can happen to anyone at any time, you never know. When that kind of tragedy can happen, when we lose someone like Mark C. from this community, you also need the flip side. We need a catharsis. We need a way where we can laugh at ourselves, where we can point our fingers and realize that, you know what, we can't take ourselves too seriously, because at some point you have to look at the universe at large. I mean, one day maybe we will get hit by an asteroid. There'll be an extinction level event, and every human being will be wiped off the face of the earth. We also live in a world where that's a possibility. And I think having dark and sardonic humor is another way that we can cope with the world. And I think sometimes, should we not want to offend people? No. I think that we don't want to offend people. But on the other hand, we also have to understand where we came from, where we've been, and where we hope we're going. And the glee with which people are now going after other people, I feel that there's something different. We had a good evolution going. We were becoming a better society. more accepting. But now there's something about the way people are going about it that I think is pernicious. And it is not the path we want to travel down. And, go back to your scripture. People who live in glass houses. All of that kind of thing. But anyway, Scott, a hilarious letter. Thank you for writing in. I very much appreciate it. This one comes from DC. Greetings, Rob, and to the Post-Geek Singularity. 'Tis I, DC, the Count of Geekery from the lockdown UK wasteland. Before I get to the main point of my letter, Rob, I'd first like to say a few words about the late, great Mark C. Mark C was a part of almost all of the YouTube communities I am a part of. I remember seeing him in the chats of live streams on channels such as Nerdrotic, Midnight's Edge, and Doomcock's live streams for a long time. Of course, I saw him here on the Burnettwork. Even though I never spoke to Mark C personally, he'd been around on YouTube for so long that it felt like I knew him in some ways. He was always a gentleman, even if he didn't agree with somebody. On many occasions, he made me chuckle with things he said, and he was definitely a guy I could spend hours drinking with, having conversations about Star Wars long into the night. He was always here, and the live chats were never quite the same without him when he was not there. He was such a presence, even digitally. The chat will never be the same without him. I was deeply saddened by his passing, as I'm sure we all were. And if you don't mind my saying so, Rob, I feel that we should have a minute's silence for Mark C. here on Robservations. If one hasn't taken place by the time you read this letter, I mean. It's your show, of course, and that's your call to make. I just felt like suggesting it, as Mark C. was a brother to all of us. We miss you, Mark C., as you go on your next adventure through the stars, or wherever time and the universe takes you. And hopefully, we'll meet again. May the Force be with you, Mark C. Well, listen, DC, I did a video about Mark, and his sisters contacted me. His funeral was on Saturday, and I felt the same way that you did. I thought he was an imagination connoisseur, and I explained in my video that I always didn't agree with him, but like you said, he was a gentleman. His sisters found this picture he had done of me. Let me adjust this and make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Let me and I'll bring it up, and you can see his signature there. I thought this was a pretty good likeness. Obviously, my hair was shorter, and I was touched that he did this drawing, and his sisters didn't know who I was. But like you, I really enjoyed Mark C. I didn't realize, because I had not seen his live stream when he was on Friday Night Tights, how ill he was. But again, I would say that he was active in all of these communities, and I thought he was a very thoughtful guy, and I really enjoyed the conversation I had with him. And I think we did, I tried to honor him with my video. It would be weird for me to ask for a moment of silence, but maybe why not? Why not? A moment of silence for Mark C. And this is, I know it's a picture of me, but it's a drawing that he actually did. Clearly, he had talent as well. And I think, why don't we just take a moment of silence, maybe not 60 seconds, but a moment of silence for Mark C. and for all that he represented in terms of his own fandom and the way he conducted himself. He was a vibrant member of the community. He was a self-professed toxic fan that I thought was anything but. So here's to you, Mark C., and I will have a drink right now in your honor. And now, DC, he's not done. This was his real letter. Observations. I've noticed a few comments in the chat, and someone mentioned in a recent letter that the talk on Robservations has been a bit negative of late. And after my last letter, where I expressed my dislike of new Star Trek, and my next intended letter being somewhat rant-like, I decided to send this one in instead, as it's more positive and should hopefully lead to more positive talking points in the future. You mentioned recently, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you'd like to talk more about non-genre movies. And this got me thinking about some of my favorite non-genre movies. So I decided to take some of my favorites from my DVD collection and give them a rewatch. It was actually a breath of fresh air after that brief break from sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. I also watched Sunset Boulevard for the first time yesterday based on your recommendation, and I loved it. What a great movie. Watching my non-genre favorites made me want to share some of them, and so I'd like to share and recommend two of them with you in the Post-Geek singularity. As a Brit, I felt it necessary to recommend British movies, even though I feel that British cinema sucks for the most part. Well, the Ealing Studios movies certainly don't, and the Hammer movies don't. That may be because of my love-hate relationship with my country. But we have a few classics, and these two are worth sharing. I'll include a synopsis of both movies, keeping it as brief and spoiler-free as I can. Number 1, Kes. Kes is a 1969 film directed by legendary British director Kenneth Loach. Anyone who loves British cinema should know who Ken Loach is, although not majorly famous or well-known, he is one of our very best. Kes tells the story of high schooler Billy Casper in the months leading up to his finishing high school. He lives with his single mother and his older brother Judd, who's an asshole. And not just in the conventional older brother way of being an asshole. They live in a dreary and gray mining town in the north of England. Billy is a hopeless case of a kid. He does not know what he wants to do with his life. He has no idea of his place in the world, and he has no job prospects other than joining his older brother working in the coal mines, a job he really doesn't want to do. Being bullied by his classmates at school does not help either. One morning, he goes nesting, an old hobby where you'd go and take bird chicks from their nests to raise them as pets. He discovers a kestrel's nest on a nearby farm and decides to steal a chick from it and take up the ancient sport of falconry by training the kestrel fledgling the kestrel fledgling that he steals. The bird he names Kes. After stealing the bird from the nest and training it, his outlook on life, his thoughts on his future, and his general mood and attitude begin to change, becoming much brighter. It's great but simple and heartwarming character arc, to be honest, but unfortunately things take a tragic turn and the ending is heartbreaking. You best have some tissues ready just in case, as the ending has been known to make many a grown man cry, myself included, and no, I'm not ashamed to admit it. The second movie is more recent, even though it came out in 2009. The movie is Harry Brown. Starring the living legend that is Michael Caine as the title character, Harry Brown is an elderly ex-Royal Marine who lives on an inner-city housing estate that is rife with youth gang culture. His wife is in the hospital, ill with cancer, and while not there with her, he spends his time at home and playing chess in the local pub with another elderly gentleman. One day, his chess buddy confides at Harry that the local youth gangs are causing him trouble and that the police won't do anything about it. So, he has armed himself with a bayonet and plans to confront them. Needless to say, this does not end well for his friend, who is murdered by the gang. This incident and the passing of his wife sets him on a revenge mission. He naturally becomes too pissed off with the current situation in his neighborhood, and seeing as the police are reluctant to sort out the youth gangs, he decides to do it himself. After figuring out where to acquire a gun, he hunts down the members of the gang that killed his friend. The final showdown takes place in the local pub and is one of the best movie climaxes I've ever seen. The movie is quite frankly a brilliantly paced and nuanced piece of writing with a great story. Acting is solid across the board, and Michael Caine proves in this movie that despite his age, he can still bring his A game when he needs to, and can still, despite his age, kick some ass with the style only old-school British actors of his caliber can. It's his best performance, I think, even better than his portrayal of Alfred Pennyworth in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and his performance of Mr. Scrooge in the Muppets Christmas Carol. Both movies should be able to be found online I know that they also have DVDs and Blu-ray releases. Harry Brown will more than likely be the easier of the two to find as physical media in the U.S. Rob, I hope that you give these movies a watch, as I'd love to hear your thoughts on them, and the thoughts of the PGS also, if they're up for sharing. Also, before you go, I have a question. Where can I watch Free Enterprise? Apologies for this being a long one again. Have a good one. May the Force be with you all, DC. Well, DC, great suggestions. I know about Kess, never seen it. I've seen Harry Brown, and you're right. I loved Harry Brown. That's a movie I should get, but it's a good one. As for Free Enterprise, it doesn't really exist on streaming now, but I do have a new version of it, my preferred version of it that I'm going to put online, that I'm going to make available for people in the PGS that want to see it. And also because I'd love to, as you all know, get the rights back and do a 4K version of it on disc, which is something I'd really like to do. We shall see. But what a great letter. Thanks for writing in, and I especially thank you for talking about Mark C. This one comes from Jefferson Tiberius. Firstly, I want to stress that I'm a huge fan of your channel. You're super great to listen to. Why, thank you, sir. Secondly, I want to say that I'm such a fan of how much you hype the Snyder Cut version of Justice League. I'm very stoked to see it come to fruition. I love all the storyboards that have come to light lately and would give my left nut to see those films transpire. But I also appreciate how much you just fully support Zack and his vision. I kind of see his continuity as an Elseworld story and would give anything to see that story happen. I wish more people listen to your walkthrough of Snyder's Justice League and how badly Warner Brothers fucked him over. I feel like most people just hate on it with zero context and only wish failure on the project. You're a pioneer, and I look forward to your breakdowns on future nerdy projects. Thanks, TJ. Well, Tiberius Jefferson, thank you for the kind words. I very much appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, look, I think here's the thing. And I wish people would understand this. Like, when I'm talking about people like Kathleen Kennedy or the Warner Brothers studio executives, nobody wants things to fail. Making movies is really, really, really hard work, and nobody is out there trying to make things that are bad or that fail. Everybody wants to be making great things. Unfortunately, the business is so high risk, especially for those people that are involved in it, and that it's very difficult to get on the same page. Now, when we were reading about, or when what was I reading yesterday about the crew over at Marvel, Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, and Victoria Alonso, the people that are over at Marvel know exactly what they're doing. They're not working out of a place of fear because they've slowly and methodically built up the team and the talent to make what they're supposed to be making. They know exactly what's going on, and there's a synergy there between the filmmakers, the crews that they have, the executive branch. I mean, it really is the way things are supposed to work. The problem is, what's happened with our studio system, the way it exists, is that the people that are running the studios are not filmmakers. And that's the problem. You know, they're not. And there is a disconnect, and there will always be a disconnect. The studio people hope that they hire the filmmakers that get to make the movies that the studio wants to make. But the studio executives are not trained. You don't have people that work in production. You don't have like famous directors then coming and starting to go work or run a studio. It doesn't work that way. So that's one of the biggest problems that we have. Now, Kathleen Kennedy was, in fact, a working producer. What Kathleen Kennedy wasn't was a studio executive or a studio head. And in the case of her, not only is she a studio head, but she's not in control. Disney's in control. So she has to, it's not like she's controlling the purse strings. So there is, you know, she knows how to produce a film. And it's a whole different experience. The thing about Kevin Feige and the people that, Victoria Alonso, Louis D'Esposito, and Kevin Feige all worked in production. They are all, the three of them are all they do have producing chops. Kevin Feige worked on 13 Marvel movies before the MCU. So they're unique. They're unique in terms of the studio. They are movie producers, and they also run their studio. And that's very rare. That's one of the secrets of the success of Marvel. And that I cannot stress enough how unique that is. So when it comes to something like the Snyder Cut, I think what happened with Zack Snyder is there was a breakdown of what the studio wanted, what the studio needed, and what Zack Snyder was giving them. And it was something that should have not happened. And it was, I think it was a failure of studio leadership that got graver and graver and graver as things went on. So I think the Snyder Cut is going to be a triumph for us as film fans. But I think also, you can't look at it as, movies are the collision, especially studio movies, are the perfect collision of art and commerce. Movies on the studio side are they're the product that the studio is manufacturing. The artistic side of it, the art of it all, whether it's a movie's great or not, well, that's not, how do you quantify that? How does a studio quantify a movie being good? All you can do is put the best people in the position where they can hopefully do their best. But that's a tall order. And from a studio perspective, a spreadsheet perspective, all you can do is look at people's past performance and be like, okay, well, let's hope they bring some of this magic to our project. But you don't ever know. And the problem is, in the case of the Warner Brothers brass, they don't know how to step in and be able to make suggestions. They panic. They're like, let's get a trailer company to cut David Ayer's Suicide Squad, which, by the way, was, in my mind, another example of the studio losing faith in the direction they were taking. I mean, they were going for more of a hardcore adult, dare I say, metal version of superheroes when, as Zach put it, the action comedy of the Marvel way of doing things was diametrically opposed to where the filmmakers that were working on Disney movies, or that were working on the Warner Brothers movies, were going. So Warner Brothers brass, they want Marvel. They want the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and what they're getting is something different. And that's why they panicked. And a lot of it had to do with money. But the people that are in charge at Warner Brothers, they don't really know. So that's why you get someone like Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns, Well, Jeff Johns isn't a filmmaker. I mean, now he is. Now he's been producing things. But, he's not a director. I mean, he's a writer. But it's again, it was messed up. It was all half-assed. It was half measures. And I think that was what happened. And the problem is Warner Brothers is like, why are we not getting the kind of success that Marvel is? Well, because Marvel is being run by 3 people who all came out of production, that know how to make movies, and they're also creatives, and they're involved in every aspect of the production. The studio executives are not. And that's why they want to be Marvel, but they're not Marvel. And there's that disconnect. So anyway, one of the reasons I like that we're getting the Snyder Cut is, look, it'll be an interesting cautionary tale. You look at it and go, okay, well, what are we going to learn from this? How is Warner Brothers going to move forward? Maybe they're not going to do anything differently. But, we shall see. It'll be interesting. I don't know. This letter comes from Catherine. Catherine says, hello, Rob. Haven't done an assignment in a long while now. However, when you encouraged your viewers to watch Sunset Boulevard, I decided to roll with it and seek it out. Luckily, it was free for me as an Amazon Prime Video member. Now on to my spoiler review. On to my non-spoiler review. I'm going to write about the cons and pros of this film. Helps me organize my thoughts a bit. Please note some of my cons might be a stretch, however, it's just the way I interpret or interact with the media. I hope you and your listeners understand. Cons. When Norma entered into the Paramount studio without a permit, I found it jarring. Sure, it was true to her character. However, this notion of people of extraordinary wealth believe that they can mold society as they fit see fit. It's scary, to say the least. Going to ramble on a bit, but please bear with me. Someone in my circle worked at the art museum. This museum was very well known and had folks all over visit exhibits, etc. A friend of mine informed me one day a professional basketball player visited the museum. I wasn't there at the time, but the story goes like this. The well-known basketball player refused my friend's request to leave his water bottle at the entryway before walking into the art museum. The water could have damaged the artwork. My friend had a big responsibility to ensure nothing hurts nor causes damage to the artwork, and it was only reasonable that this man follow the museum's protocol. However, he insisted my friend was pestering him for the sake of it and wanted to talk to the manager. He thought he was above everything because of his fame. On to the next con, and this one is minor, yet still worth a mention. The film drops a lot of names and references to other things, and as a first-time viewer, it was hard for me to familiarize myself with the world and its time. It's not the film's fault, however. I felt like I was missing out on the things that they were talking about. Let's move on to the positives. Gloria Swanson was superb. She probably inspired Disney's Cruella de Vil, and maybe it was the fact she said imbeciles. The way she talked, her manner, reminded me of the famed villainous cartoon counterpart. I adored the camera work. At one point, the camera had a mirror, and without turning, we see Norma walk up the stairs. It was a very creative use of framing. Great set design. Joe enters this bedroom for the first time, and I picked up on it right away. The ceiling had something dark and eluded me. Once the film continued onward, that ceiling mark had a very satisfying payoff that I'll let the viewers describe for themselves. The character of Max. I could be terribly wrong, however. This butler character, Max, might have inspired the crew who made Cats Don't Dance. I recall a character in that film named Max, and he too wore white gloves and worked in Hollywood as a butler. What a coincidence. Thanks, Rob, for encouraging me to watch this film. I quite enjoyed Sunset Boulevard and its many wonders. Peace, Catherine. Well, Catherine, by the way, I've always loved the name Catherine. I'm glad you liked it, and that was a very non-spoiler review. In terms of people with wealth and privilege thinking that the rules don't apply to them, yeah, I've never quite understood that either. I would think anybody with half a brain would realize, we can't have water inside where there's rare paintings and artwork. I don't understand the moronic attitude that someone has. Like, listen, sir, it's please, if you tripped and fall, not that you would because you're a professional ball player, but if you did, we never know when that's going to happen. If you accidentally turned around and bumped into somebody and your water went flying, if you're being checked accidentally and your water goes flying and splashes on a painting, that would be bad. So how about not having water? If there's no water, problem solved. I don't understand that. I've never understood that. It's not, and people should get it. Like what I don't understand is how come those kind of truths are not self-evident. But what are you going to do? But I'm glad that you like Sunset Boulevard. I think it's such a great movie. This one comes from Scarpad. Scarpad, I think I'm saying it right. Scarpad. Scarpad says, I watched your latest video on the dumpster fire that is new Trek. When you were reading all those comments from the Paramount Plus presentation, I could just not believe that these people are entrusted to continue the vision of Gene Roddenberry, or for that part, even Rick Berman. When Berman took over Trek, he was probably as ill-informed on it as all these working on it today, but what Berman understood was that the Trek legacy and its fans were important, so he studied up and hired people to continue the series with the same seriousness that Roddenberry did. Of course, Gene was still alive back then, but my God, what is Rod Roddenberry thinking well beyond a paycheck about protecting what has endured for so long? I'm glad that the 600 hours of classic Trek, there's more than 600, remain as a testament of all the fans who persevered and supported it for all these years. I'm nearing 60 now, but I remember coming home from school and sitting my 8-year-old butt in front of the TV and getting lost in the sauce of Trek. The wild aliens, the ships, the great Captain Kirk fist fights. How dare they say Trek was never for kids? Even as an 8-year-old that looked upon the first 2 seasons with such awe, I could tell that something was off with the third. Kids are smarter than you think, all you brains at Bad Robot and Secret Hideout. Maybe I'm of a different era, but I want to see adults working together in space to create something magical, not just existing for sneaky remarks and partying it up. Thanks, Rob, for understanding, because you too were me sitting in front of that TV with your cassette recorder. I had boxes of audio tapes with Trek, Space 1999, UFO, etc. That was my DVR of the mind, exploring all these wild adventures and dreaming of a future where I would be in them. I wouldn't want to be in Discovery's future, or Picard's, or Lower Decks. Live long and prosper, Rob, and keep those memories of Starlog, poster books, photo novels alive. Trek lives now, maybe only in our hearts and minds. Well, I'll tell you, Scarphead, that's it's like, I honestly think that this idea that we need to make a show full of young people, young aliens, a Guardians of the Galaxy-esque show to appeal to kids is the problem with our entire culture. You're infantilizing children. The whole point, the whole reason I loved Star Trek when I was a kid, and I started watching it when I was 5, was because I wanted to grow up and be those people. I wanted to know Dr. McCoy and Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk and Scotty and especially Uhura, Chekhov and Sulu. I wanted to meet them. That's why I watched the show when I was a kid. I'm like, I want to grow up and be those guys maybe one day. Can I do that? Can I? And, you know, when I was a kid, I never liked watching shows about other kids. I mean, I did. I watched the Hour Gang shorts, but even those were sort of weird because the kids lived in this netherworld where they were halfway to adults anyway. And I did watch Leave It to Beaver and the Partridge Family and Brady Bunch, and those were shows about kids. But I also watched sitcoms like Gilligan's Island. There's no kids on the island. You know, I watched I Dream of Jeannie. And I loved all that stuff. And I was a kid already. So watching shows about other kids doing things was sort of strange to me. And this idea that now our kid entertainment is, and I'm sure Star Trek Prodigy is going to be this way, where all of these kids are going to be, I'm sure, smarter or better than the adults. I mean, yeah, they find some derelict Starfleet ship, and I'm sure that they do things better than the adults would, which to me is like, I don't know. I mean, look, I won't pillory Prodigy until I've seen it. And then if it's bad, I'll say it's bad. But if it's good, you know, I want it to be good. David Mack is working on it as a consultant. There are two girls that I greatly respect who are also working on that show as writers. So I want it to be good for my friend's sake. I do. And it gives me no pleasure to see bad Star Trek. But I feel that the people that are controlling Star Trek now are giving us bad Star Trek and bad science fiction. And I wish they would be better. Please be better. I would like it if you were better. Stephen Goggin writes in, Dear Rob and listeners, over the past 2 months on Wednesday nights, I've watched all of the Fast and Furious movies from the 8-movie Blu-ray box set I have of the franchise. I found myself very much entertained by all the movies, and I even watched Hobbs and Shaw on the Sky Cinema streaming service, and I was much entertained by this movie too, though I felt the streaming version of Hobbs and Shaw lacked the oomph that the quality that physical media gives you. It's true. I was particularly awed by the special effects in Fast and Furious 7 and 8, and I thought, wow, high-quality stuff for a Blu-ray. My question is this. Is the Fast and Furious franchise worth a 4K DVD upgrade? Yours truly, Stephen Goggin, an Irishman in Somerset. I feel like, look, I always want the best version of a movie possible in physical media, and if you have a great transfer, it's always worth the upgrade to me, especially if it's in Dolby Vision HDR. Absolutely. But again, it has to be a good transfer. And it depends really how much you like the movies. I think the best versions of films are when the movies have been filmed photochemically and they're finished, you have a great new transfer. That's why whether it's The Matrix, Die Hard, Blade Runner, there's been some amazing 4K transfers that have been done. That's why even Total Recall, pretty good transfer. That new 4K transfer is great. I can't wait for Basic Instinct in 4K because that movie's always looked like shit to me on home video. So bring it out in 4K. But, the Fast and Furious movies, why not? I think the original Fast and Furious could certainly benefit by a 4K upgrade. So, yeah. Look, as long as the transfers are done right, and now they are in HDR, Dolby Vision, why not? To me, it's always better to have something in 4K when it's well done, as opposed to, say, like Terminator 2, which wasn't. So, yeah. This is interesting. James Wallace, James Wallace writes in a letter. And this is an interesting letter. Hi, Rob. You brought up excellent points in regards to the fact that we are not born equal. People look at this as a handicap, when yes, in aspects, I suppose it could be. For example, years ago, I used to work with kids with autism or had Down syndrome, and these were great kids. Were they like a majority of people? No. Yet they had their individual aspects that everyone could learn from, and in some ways aspire to be. If people are able and can work toward being better at something that initially they were, say, not as good as someone else, that can inspire others to be better at something like a sport or writing or any other type of endeavor. Part of the problem in our society right now seems that we encourage some aspects victimhood. There are victims out there of a lot of things, but when you blanket it that no one can have a shot due to this or that, that's when you hurt people's odds. For this industry, a lot of the problems started in 2016 and the Oscars So White campaign. Now, this was mainly due to Straight Outta Compton not getting nominated for Best Picture, and then from there it turned into kicking out older Academy members, and from there it turned into we need to be more inclusive in this industry. With the industry working in it for years, it tends to go into overdrive if criticized, not realizing that it's already been ahead of the curve and should actually be proud of its accomplishments. But people have short memories. It also doesn't matter. All sorts of films get overlooked during awards season. I have so many screeners that I either haven't had time to watch or it doesn't interest me. As a result of not watching anything, I won't vote. It wouldn't be fair to vote when I haven't watched 35 films and various shows that have been sent to me. Things get overlooked, and that's just how it is sometimes. Last night, I binged the first 6 episodes, episode 5 was missing, of LA Law on Amazon Prime. Now, I used to watch this show as a kid. Loved it. Thought of becoming a lawyer at one point due to that show and would debate and argue. The show brought up a lot of points that needed consideration. The show was released 35 years ago, and it could easily be on today. In fact, Blair Underwood, one of the stars of the show, is trying to bring it back. Here's the thing. You look at Alex Kurtzman and his claims of always being inclusive, acting like Star Trek wasn't inclusive until he arrived. And if he got his hands on the show, he would probably claim the same thing. LA Law raised subjects and had people of all types in front of the camera and behind the camera. In fact, I worked with 2 women that worked on the show. One was a producing director and one that was an assistant director. I would geek out and ask them all sorts of questions regarding what happened behind the scenes. It's amazing how short-sighted we've become in thinking that issues addressed in film and television today haven't been addressed before. For example, the pilot to LA Law had a trans character, a woman of color, that was dying, who was raped by privileged white guys, and Mario Van Peebles played a character that he felt was a token of the firm. The show would go on to explore all sorts of issues with not-so-easy answers. In fact, there's a regular character that was mentally impaired and how the other characters in the show responded to him. The show also featured the first lesbian kiss on television, which was admitted by the producers as a stunt to boost the ratings. Also, it wasn't the first lesbian kiss on television. That honor went to a lesser-known show. LA Law was a massive hit, an awards juggernaut in its day, making stars of its ensemble cast and even people behind the scenes. David E. Kelley got his start on the show and wrote some of the best episodes. The show also had its own legal drama with a lawsuit by the co-creator, who is a woman, and it's a sure bet that lawsuit killed her career. That's what's so infuriating about today's showrunners or creators of content acting like they're the first to tackle difficult issues or that diversity or inclusion started with them. Be damned, the past. Anyway, anyone in the Post-Geek Singularity, if you're interested, you should give the show a watch on Amazon Prime. with the exception of the look of the times, the show still holds up in regards to drama, and I felt myself engaged once again, binging the first 6 episodes, which to me just emphasizes that it doesn't matter when the content was released. If it has a great story, then it's timeless. That from James Wallace. Look, I agree with you. I loved LA Law. I thought that LA Law was amazing. And yeah, that's why when I talk about we were experiencing a normal evolution of culture, what I find so strange, maybe it's because I'm older, but like when I see college students bitching and moaning about safe spaces, and I'm like, I know you guys have only been on the planet Earth for 18, 19, 20, 21 years, but the things that you're bitching about have been ongoing in my lifetime. I've watched things get progressively better. You know, as I've said, my best friend that I grew up with, we shared a backyard together when we were little kids. He's been married to his husband for quite some time. And, you know, he wouldn't have thought that would have been a possibility 20 years ago in his lifetime, but things have changed and things are getting better. I just fear that things have been so derailed that the discussions have been the idea that if you don't believe in something, or, you know, you have someone like a guy like Jordan Peterson who's still being called alt-right when all he ever did, if you go back and you look into what he was saying, that he won't deal with compelled speech. And people are missing the point. What he was saying, I mean, it just happened to be that the issue started with trans activists or people wanting to use certain pronouns. And he's like, and by the way, that was put into law in Canada. There is compelled speech now. And even Jordan Peterson himself said, look, and I'm no Jordan Peterson acolyte, but I was curious. He was part of the intellectual dark web, and everybody that was involved in that. I was Brett Weinstein. I do watch his Dark Horse podcast. He's an evolutionary biologist that basically got run out of Evergreen State College, my former school, by a bunch of students. Like, what the fuck do you guys know? You got rid of one of your favorite, one of the most cherished professors on campus because he was questioning something he should have been questioning, and so should you. That's what's so crazy. But yes, like you said, James, television, especially good primetime television all the way back to the 80s, they were dealing with hard-hitting issues. They were dealing with these subject matters. That's why it's so weird that everybody's talking about, well, we have to have inclusion. When have we not? I mean, when you're talking about maybe Donna Reed or something, a TV show, back in the 50s or 60s when you couldn't get away from things. But television for the last 40 years, especially in the latter half of the 80s and onward, has been pretty hard-hitting. I'm not saying that everything was. I mean, sure, Dukes of Hazzard's problematic, of course. But, I mean, again, you want to get rid of Dukes of Hazzard, or you want to admit that that's the way the world was? I mean, it's tough. Well, let's see. Let's see what you guys are saying. There's a lot of people in the chat firing in stuff. What are you guys saying? I don't know. I don't know because I haven't read yet, but I'm about to find out. Skywalker Zarel says, hi, sir, RMB. Did you manage to check out the Modicase link I sent you? I know you said you thought they weren't Modicases, but they are, because I know the videos you thought the link was for, i.e. legendary collectibles, which are amazing, but wow, pricey. Yes, sir, I have a few Modicases on order, but I'm not going to see. I wish I could. The DXs? There's a guy on YouTube, The Collector. I think it's his channel. He did some great Modicase things. I really like those Modicases. I have a wall. I want them to go right over there, and I want to put many of my figures into the Modicases. But I would have thought that Modicases, the whole point would be they would be available. You could buy them, and you could play around with them. You can't. They don't. They order them, or they get them manufactured based on pre-orders. So there isn't. You can't. They don't have them lying around, which I can understand that. But wanting to, or like, I want Modicases right now, and to have to wait that long. Pain in the ass. But yeah, the legendary collectibles, which are amazing, but they are pricey. Those ones that Gem Mint did, they were doing Kickstarters for, those are beautiful, but man, those are expensive. Terry Pennington Jr. sends in a tip and says, which television series or movie, in your opinion, has had the biggest impact on parents naming their kids after a character from a series or a movie? Ooh, well, as not having kids myself, I don't know if I can answer that question, but that's probably what kids. God, that's tough, man. I don't know if I have an answer to that, Terry. I mean, are there a lot of girls named Katniss running around now? I know that a lot of Leia, Han, Luke, something like that. I would probably say Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, ultimately. That's what I would think. The lovely, lovely Willow Yang is here. Willow says, what is your opinion of the Golden Globes? Do you think they have merit or are they completely useless awards? Well, are they useless? I don't know. I mean, we talk about the Hollywood Foreign Press that doesn't really represent a lot of people. But if they want to give them out as an indicator, I mean, I think that they now have a pop culture imprint that they might be silly. And now they're talking about, well, there's not enough people of color. If you're talking about the Hollywood Foreign Press, what countries are you talking about? I mean, it's such a we're so weird. America is so weird. The things that we seem to care about, it's strange to me. I don't understand it. But I mean, maybe. I think most award shows. I mean, I love the Academy Awards. I've loved them since I was a kid. But do they represent the best of everything? No, they're a pretty good indicator, though. They might not get the best picture right all the time, but I think the Golden Globes, I can take them or leave them. I don't think they necessarily have a lot of credibility when you start digging into them. But does any award show really? Duval, DD, or is it D Duval, sends in a super chat and says, I just watched the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman and Man of Steel in anticipation. And while I appreciate them more, I still don't think they're good. Zack Snyder's Justice League is something I'll watch, but I doubt I'll enjoy it. I'm still happy he gets to complete his vision. I think a lot of people feel that way, actually. I don't think you have to feel bad about that. There's a lot of people... Look, I think Zack Snyder's vision of these characters is... Certainly it's unique. It's his own. I understand where he's coming from. But I also think there's a lot of validity to it. If two Kryptonians were battling in a metropolitan area, it would happen. A lot of what happened at the end of Man of Steel would probably happen. So I've always liked that. I've always liked the film for its own sake. So yeah. But yeah, you know what? I mean, I hope you enjoy it. Maybe I've been reading early reactions saying that there's a lot of heart in it, and that the film is a lot more about family than people would have thought. And maybe Zach got it right. Maybe the third time's the charm, and we're going to get something special. I know we're going to get something I'm going to enjoy watching. Am I going to love it? I don't know, but I can't wait to watch it. 11 o'clock Wednesday night. I'll be here at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. with bells on, and I'll be reporting what I thought to you. Ash Chowan's here. Ash says, I love Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, but what irked me the most was Luthor's meta-human folder on his computer. MPEG files with each JLA member's insignia on them was severely unnatural. Cameos could have been more organically introduced. I am not going to argue with you there, sir. I thought that was... Look, goofy as hell. The Martha thing's goofy, too. I mean, it's just... Why would you design these logos? It's so weird. It's goofy. It's goofy. I agree with you. Stubble McShave says, who knew that Demolition Man would be the most accurate depiction of our future? I even thought Escape from New York was more likely future than Demolition Man. I know, crazy, right? Weird. Strange times we live in. The weird, it's bizarre. And you know what? I haven't watched Demolition Man in a while, but I need to go back and watch it again because, more and more people are pointing to it and go, the three seashells thing was one thing, but talking about how our society is more like the Demolition Man society that's coming down the pike. So weird. So weird. Duval59 became a member of the channel, or Double D. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. Let's see. Stubble McShave comes back and says, I hope Zack Snyder's Justice League is great, but it feels like it has been almost been talked to death before it premieres. Well, certainly on this channel it has. Look, I find the whole thing fascinating. Everything that happened. And I really can't stop thinking about it on a number of different levels. But basically, they just released another trailer today, and I'm like, fuck yeah, man. Like I said, the shit looks so metal. When I say that, I'm now it's become a funny thing but to me, it just looks like I'm going to have a good time watching this movie. And I haven't seen, I'm very much anticipating it. It's 4 hours long. I think it's this epic. I feel like we're getting something special that there's so much expectation going into it as well that it's going to be. The funny thing is, there's expectation, but I'm not as invested. I'm kind of keeping it at arm's length because I'm seeing the whole thing as like a phenomenon and it's not just a movie anymore. It wasn't like I was really anticipating Endgame, and Endgame really delivered to me. It really had the goods. I really thoroughly enjoyed Endgame. And reading people's criticisms after, like, that doesn't get time travel right. I'm like, come on, man. What? Does everything hold together? Maybe not, but the movie did so many ambitious things that I'm like, I loved it, and that's what I want. I want to be taken on a ride, and I'm thinking it's looking fun. It's looking fun. David Crabtree, our man David Crabtree is here. 102. Hello, Sir Rob. I know you appreciate tech for artistic purposes. I just splurged and upgraded my drawing tablet with a new 24-inch Wacom Cintiq Pro 24 touchscreen drawing display, 4K resolution, 8,192 points of pen pressure sensitivity and tilt recognition, an etched glass screen that mimics the precision and feel of a pen and paper. I'm very excited to continue my artwork utilizing this fantastic tool. I'm sure you get excited when you get to experience new film production and editing technology. David Crabtree, you are correct. Few things get me as excited. You know what, man? I ordered the new DaVinci Pro software that comes for a special limited time. It comes with a controller. I have to tell you, it might not be as good as touching a beautiful woman's breasts, but when you get certain equipment, you get your fingers on it, you know what I'm saying? It has that kind of a response to me, if you know what I mean. So yes, bring on new, and you know what? It's not so much the equipment, it's you got to use it. And it sounds like I've seen your artwork. I love your artwork. I can't wait to see what you're going to create on it. So good on you, sir. It was worth the investment. You've invested in your tools, which means you're investing in your talent. And there's never any. We got to see it. Send it our way. It's been a long time since you've done a fan drawing of either myself or John Campia. Send it on over. Draw me something on that as John Schnepp might say. Draw me something on that new tablet, son. Send it on over. Duroc Media is here. Duroc Media says, I was never around to be with Mark C., but he sounds like such an awesome guy, being able to disagree with an opinion, but handle it respectfully. It's how I think we should all be able to navigate life. Duroc, yes, sir. I agree. 100%. I think that's exactly how we should navigate life. It should be that way. And I think that, I think Mark C. was that kind of guy. And what was interesting was he was self-aware, too. Like, he understood. Like, he knew that if he had a differing point of view, he knew it was a differing point of view, and he'd say, listen, I know we don't see eye to eye about this, but, and I like that he continued the discussions with me offline. I mean, it was still online, but off the show. Like, he would contact me via DM on Twitter, and we go back and forth and talk about things, and then we geek out about certain things, too. So, yeah, I'm sorry we lost him, that we lost him so young. Johnny Boy is here. Danny Boy says, hi, Rob. This is just a little salute for Mark C., a true imagination connoisseur. I feel a little guilty, or more to the point, survivor's guilt, since I've battled cancer for 10 years and finally been given the all clear. May he rest in peace. Well, Danny Boy, here's to your all clear. And may he rest in peace. And congratulations on you being all clear. You know, my mom is a two-time cancer survivor. And my friend Mike Schertz, who I did crisis medicine with, is a two-time a really 2-time cancer survivor, bouts of cancer that should have killed him. He's going strong. And, like you proved, it can be done. It can be done. Duroc Media says, never thought the Snyder Cut would ever exist. And the topic was a pointless one with pundits. Thought DC fans were barking too much. But I am shocked that it's coming. I can't wait to see it. I can't believe they did it. See, that's one of the things that I think is so amazing. Like, there are people that are like, oh, Rob, you used to say that it wasn't going to come. Well, things change. I didn't think it would ever come. I mean, why would it? And it would irk me. Everything I ever said about the Snyder Cut, like what form it would exist in, was exactly like what I said. It was not finished. They had to put $70 million into it. But knowing that there's always a cut of a movie when you go into post-production, you start cutting, there's something to watch. But I love that it happened. I love that there's a lot of, people talk about the toxicity that existed. I can speak to that. There are a lot of, I would call them acolytes, Zack Snyder's acolytes. There are people that were pretty rude, but I didn't hold it against them because a lot of people are younger and everything. And I understand that this Snyder Cut thing was something to believe in. We all need something to believe in. And what I love about it is it was realized in the very best way, I think, in that you had HBO Max, you had a new regime wanting to make a name for themselves. The perfect storm that needed to happen happened, so we got the Snyder Cut. And everybody comes out right. The fans, the galvanized fans that really were raising money for suicide prevention, that were doing the things like flying the banners over the studio or putting up things on buses at Comic-Con or whatever. All of those people that really were doing something and were really pushing forward not just the Snyder Cut, but the idea of maybe making a change, doing something good for the world in a way. It's great vindication. It's vindication that AT&T comes in and shows that they're a fan of artists. I think they made a big statement about who they're going to be working with in the future and what kind of support they're going to give them. And I think it's a big win for everybody. And it's a win for Zack Snyder and his family. Because ultimately, you don't have to like the movie, but I think it's great that he got to realize his vision. Gosh, there's all these duplicate. It keeps showing up twice. I don't know why that is. David Hilton sends in a super chat and says, the world needs a Night of the Lepus remake. If you guys don't know what Night of the Lepus is, do a Google search right now. Night of the Lepus. And yes, better yet, watch the trailer. And you know what, Devin? Oh, it's not David. It was Devin. Devin Hilton. Devin, you're correct. I would love to see. I don't know who would make that. Maybe Blumhouse would. Night of the Lepus remake. But I don't want to spoil it for all of you. But just go Night of the Lepus. Just look up Night of the Lepus trailer and watch it. Brandon Sheehy sends in a tip and says, Rob, your thoughts on scenes in mainstream movies that you would never see now, i.e. the provocative sandwich board McClane wears in Die Hard 3. Oh, highly tense scene made better with an intelligent character like Zeus, who immediately deduces that something is amiss. Well, Brandon, yeah. In Die Hard with a Vengeance, when John McClane is told by Simon to go into Harlem and wear a sandwich board that says, I hate the N-word, things got volatile really fast. I don't know if you would see that, but yes, I thought it was great, and it was great how I loved how Sam Jackson's character comes out and goes, okay, he was smart enough to say, clearly something's wrong here, and it was that is a great scene, and Sam Jackson is great in it. Could you do it today? Probably not. I can't imagine. But you know what? Maybe you could, because the scene, the heart is in the right place of all of it. I mean, what it was saying. So, yeah. Yeah, so It's weird. I mean, we don't. It's funny that movie was what 95. God, it's 26 years ago. I really love that movie. I wish they kept the original ending that's on the disc when John McClane finds Simon Gruber in Europe at the end and gets him. Duroc Media says, my older brother doesn't understand why I love physical media. It's sad that it's phasing out to me. I used to watch all the Lord of the Rings special features. Funny that I've probably seen your work without even knowing it. Yeah, and my interviews. I mean, even though I didn't work on all the pieces on there, a lot of my interviews made it into all of those pieces. I did many hours of interviews with people on the first two Lord of the Rings movies. It was crazy. A lot of people don't get physical media because now we live in a world where everything's streaming. Why do you want to collect physical media? Why would you want to do that? And I'm like, well, fun. It looks better than streaming, and I like having a collection of movies. Duroc Media says, sending in super chats, my bank thought it was fraud, but would like to give a special shout out to your mods. Your mods tend to go unnoticed at times. That's why I try and thank my mods after every show. I love my moderating staff. I think they do a great job. They're a fantastic bunch, those mods. Preston Bell sends in a super chat and says, Rob, I just watched Sucker Punch, and it actually exceeded my expectations. It's no Godfather or anything, but the action scenes were good, and it has an interesting premise, albeit flawed. Zack's action sequences never disappoint. Yeah, you know what? It's pretty much a hoot. Pretty much a hoot. Yeah, I mean, it's you can't deny it's fun to watch. Does it hold together as a movie? But it is fun to watch, certainly. Terry Pennington says, do you think a movie done in the style of talk radio being done today with Eric Bogosian as a YouTuber would work? Yeah, I think it would. I love talk radio. Yeah, it'd be the same thing. People would call in. Sure. Would you get Michael Wincott back to play the metalhead? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, I really like that movie a lot. But yeah, I think it absolutely would work. It would absolutely, I don't know. The funny thing is could you have somebody be as incendiary as Eric Bogosian was in talk radio and still be platformed on YouTube? I guess it could be anywhere. You could say he's live on Vimeo or something or whatever. But yeah, I think that it could very well be. Alexander Wilson says, I follow a YouTuber named Zenny62, and he had Edward Losey on, and they discussed a wide range of topics, and one of those topics was Tango Shalom. They showed the trailer and talked about the movie. What is Edward Losey's involvement with the movie? Edward Losey is a publicist, and he is a longtime friend of Joe Bologna and Renee Taylor's. They were married for 50 years, and their son directed the film, and both Renee and Joe Bologna are in the movie, but Ed Losey is their longtime publicist, came on to be our publicist for the film. So Ed is representing and doing work, getting our movie out there. That's cool that you heard him on somewhere. And see, normally he's promoting the film through getting other people to watch it and reviews and all that, but I love that Ed Losey himself was on a show promoting Tango Shalom. That is fantastic. I love it. So that's great. Our man Claudius is here. Hello, Claudius. Bonsoir, Robert. I stopped collecting comic books in the 90s. I think one way Marvel and DC can win back readers is to focus on omnibuses and complete story arcs instead of individual title month-to-month crossover cliffhanger formats. What do you think? Look, man, as somebody who is surrounded by literally hundreds of omnibuses and graphic novels and collections, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that they should go to that model. I mean, the thing about omnibuses, though, is some of them have like 3 years worth of stories in them, so it's hard. Like I don't without the individual books coming out. But yeah, I think they definitely. I mean, they made inroads into bookstores and things like that. So I agree. I agree with that. I think it's a good idea. I really enjoy going back and buying omnibuses and then going back and sitting down and reading a whole storyline. I think that's the way to do it. I really agree. To get the industry to focus on graphic novels, I think is definitely the wave of the future. Fernando Barrero says, any 4K transfers in the last 12 months or so you enjoyed? Well, this is going to be a surprise to no one. My disc of the year, which, I keep close by because I just like having this. This might be one of my favorite physical releases of all time, only because it's one of my favorite movies. Look at this. The color of this box, the way it's got a matte finish. I feel like Vanna White. Boy, do I love. Look at what's in this box. That's what I'm talking about. That is physical media the way I want it served up. But there have been a lot of stuff like the Total Recall, Showgirls. No, but the Elephant Man I picked up, the Ealing Studios discs. I know they're black and white, but yeah, there's been a lot. Actually, let me put this back on the shelf up here. But I think that there's been a lot of great physical 4K releases. New and old Tenet, the Tenet, whether you like the movie or not, that disc is unbelievable. It's incredible. So, and other things, it was great to get like Full Metal Jacket and The Shining in 4K. I can't wait to get Clockwork Orange in 4K. Looking forward to that. So, they're older movies, but it's great to have them in 4K. Sheriff Carl says, dude, with Falcon and Winter Soldier dropping Thursday night, we'll have the perfect bangover cure from the full-on metal as fuck assault of Justice League. Shit looks like DC Frazetta. That's exactly what it looks like. And I'm in for that. Strap down your tits and nuts because this shit's gonna be explosive. Well, Sheriff Carl, I agree with you, and you put it so well. It is gonna be. That's a great way to put it. It's Frank Frazetta by way of DC. What's not to love, man? What is not to love? So, yeah. Hey, Three Medias. Hey, brother, it's Chris. Three Medias again. Just showing some love. Keep on keeping on. I may be soon for my first hot toy. Well, come on, Three Medias. Come on, Chris. What would that hot toy be? I took a picture last night because I was playing here in the office. I've got T'Challa here, and then I also had Christopher Reeve. Two legends, 40 years apart. Had him in the old moving stuff around, but I love this. This, by the way, this is a great hot. If you get this Black Panther figure, it comes with lights and black light, and the costume lights up. It is one great figure. It's a fantastic figure. So, but I'd be curious, what are you going to get? Stub McShave says, I joined when your subs were in the single digits. Mark C joined soon after. I agreed with him half the time and disagreed with him half the time. I remember writing in a letter arguing that he was not toxic, but a rather passionate fan. I always respected his convictions. So, Mark, may you shelter in the Creator's hand, and may the last embrace of the mother welcome you home. Ooh, I like that, Stubble. Yeah, cheers to that. By the way, I had never drank this before. To be honest, I'm going to show you what it is. It's spiked. Look at this. Spiked cold brew, salted caramel. I think I thought it was, I didn't really understand. So here's the can. Spiked cold brew, salted caramel, 12.5% alcohol. Come on. It tastes like an alcoholic coffee milkshake. There's, man, I don't know who makes this stuff, but I love it when people make things just for me. Because, I haven't found my black cherry coffee sparkling water. It disappeared. Like, it hasn't shown up in the grocery store in months. I'm like, what? I find this thing that I really like. Somebody out there who watches this show is like an AHA rep. can I like buy it in bulk from you? Because I fell in love with the sparkling water that I was drinking on this show all the time, and then it's just gone. I don't like it when that happens. But Stubble, I think you're absolutely right about Mark. And I have to say, you don't think about losing somebody like in this community. I just assume because we're all relatively, well, I'm not, but most of us, the average age of the viewer on this channel, I can tell you. Would you like to know? Would you like to know? Because you can get real-time YouTube demographics at whatever you want. So I'll tell you, because I always like to check in. So I'm going to go to my analytics, and I'll give you a little, we'll see, about our audience. Actually, go to the audience here. So, here is the audience of people that watch this channel. 13 to 17, 0.3%. 18 to 24, 9.9%. 25 to 34, 29.4%. And the biggest part of this audience is 35 to 44 years of age. That's 32.6% of the audience. 45 to 54 is 20.3%. 55 to 64 is 5.5%. And 65 plus is 1.9%. It's almost a perfect, like a bell curve, almost perfect. And this is really interesting. You want to hear so this is pretty interesting. So the top geographies, 53.5% of the audience for the show is in the United States. 11%, 11.2% is the United Kingdom. But listen to this. Here's where other people watch this show from. Canada, India, Australia, Germany, the Philippines, Mexico, Ireland, Sweden, Malaysia, the Netherlands, Brazil, Indonesia, New Zealand, South Africa, Bangladesh, Finland, France, Spain, Pakistan, Portugal, Argentina, Puerto Rico, although that's not a country, Norway, Poland, Nigeria, African Kung Fu Nazis, Greece, Romania, the United Arab Emirates, Denmark, Singapore, Russia, Italy, Peru, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and 11.2% are other. So pretty interesting demographic makeup there. We truly are going all over the world, which is pretty fun, pretty amazing. Zomagod sends in a tip and says, "Hey Rob, first time tipping. You've seen me on John's show. I've spoken to people online who say Warner Brothers should reboot DC. But to me, they have. By making everything live action via the multiverse, everything is canon, including that awful JLA 97 TV movie. Remember that? Oh my God. Oh my God. How can you talk about that? You're right. They kind of have. Everything is there. I mean, I know what they want. One of the things I really like about the Marvel, I saw Paul Bettany. If you guys haven't, I highly recommend watching the Assembled show on Disney Plus. It's their new behind the scenes show, and they dropped the first episode on Friday. It's the making of WandaVision. Really good. I mean, yes, it was fluffy from fluffy from a Disney standpoint, but it still had a lot of information, and it was really good. I mean, you got a sense of everybody working on the show, and Paul Bettany talks, I think he was on this show. Maybe I was watching him behind the scenes, but he was talking about, or somebody was, the episodic nature of the whole Marvel universe and how it's all together. And I like that about Marvel. It's just like the comics. Whereas DC can be a little different. Brandon Keown is subscribed to the channel. Thanks, Brandon. Ronan subscribed to this channel. Thank you, Ronan. So, yeah, now it's a multiverse, which is fine. But you're right. I mean, now that everything's a part of everything else, which I kind of like in the sense that you can enjoy what you want. It doesn't have to be exactly this way. It can be different. You can have things any way you want. Danny Boy comes back and says, Weta Workshop have just emailed release dates for pre-orders of the quarter-scale Superman and Darkseid figures the same day as Zack Snyder's Justice League. They say order numbers will be limited. I just hope they will ship to the UK. Oh, I'm sure they will. Yeah, they do really good. They do really good work. I love what Weta Workshop does. That Darkseid, I got to see the whole thing though. Brandon Sheehy says in a tip and says, Rob, I know you're gonna marathon Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League. I'm gonna try a marathon of Dawn of the Dead, the original Dawn of the Dead 2004, and Army of the Dead upon its release. Is that something you consider? That I did not consider that, but I totally would. That would be a lot of fun. I'd do that. Yep. Claudia says, Rob, another show with more letters about jackbooted cancel culture. I wonder why so many viewers are worried about losing racist iconography and literature. Do they forget or not realize that what they call censorship has been in the process for 100 years? Well, you know what? I think you're bring up a good point, but you know, I don't know if we should get rid of things. I think things should be contextualized, and things maybe belong in museums and put away. But I think that was the evolution that I was speaking about earlier. I think our society was evolving out of those things. That eventually there was a natural progression, and what's strange is it was happening. You know, things that people there was a lot more civility, but now we're this weird accelerated process of. I think what's weird about the whole culture is that it's become filled with righteousness. That people believe that it's their duty to go in and eliminate this kind of thing, and it doesn't seem like it's now. It's almost like an ideology. It's become an ideology to get rid of this stuff. And I think, again, bad ideas evolve out of culture. And I think that's just a natural evolution. But when people are filled up with this righteousness, I think a lot of the time that they are misconstruing things. And it isn't just racist iconography. I think it's also political ideologies, or it's different kinds of ways of belief, or it's just, to me, it's the way it's being done is what's dangerous, because I think a lot of bad ideas will just evolve out of culture, and they have been, indeed they have been, but now there's something more going on, and it scares me, to be honest. Depiction of rape in that film, and it's bad, but it's supposed to be bad. And that's kind of the whole point of the movie. Now, if someone comes along and says, we can no longer have movies that have any depictions of anything like rape in them. Now, a lot of people would say, well, that's a good thing. You know, because what about victims of rape? I mean, this could trigger them. Well, in the context of A Clockwork Orange, which I think is a very important a film, and it's a great film, if you started removing certain elements of the film, then it would all start to fall apart. And I understand that I know people that horrible crime has happened to, and if you're going to get rid of any depiction of that crime, and there's people that would say that you need to do that, I think things start to get dangerous. I think that everything is contextual. Like, if you're going to say we have to get rid of all depictions of rape because we don't, why? You know, I at first I'm like, okay. But then when you start going and censoring movies, I mean, this is something that has been going on in human history since the dawn of man. And if you're going to pretend like it doesn't happen anymore, let's get rid of all the depictions of it, I think it's a slippery slope. And where do we wind up? I mean, on one hand, you don't want people to get upset because of entertainment. But on the other hand, I think the message of Clockwork Orange for discerning adults is an important one. And it means something. And it's tough. It's tough. Drock Media says, I only have 4 Hot Toys. I have John Wick, Thanos, Grogu life size, and the deluxe Mando with a pre-order of Cap from Endgame. But my passion for them is dangerous. Oh, dude, because they're so great. They're the best action figures that have ever been made. And it is dangerous because you want more. They're like Lay's potato chips. No one can eat just one. And I agree. Claudius says, Note, most Hollywood pictures that exist today were influenced by the Motion Picture Production Code of 1930. Do our viewers have the same level of vitriol toward the code that forbids movies to depict, among many things, interracial relationships? Yeah, but that's what I mean. I mean, the Hays Code, you couldn't even show a married couple sleeping in the same bed together, and much less interracial relationships. I mean, all that stuff was silly. But again, it evolved. Those bad ideas evolved out of culture. You know, the Hays Code eventually was replaced. The movies of the 70s, the late 60s and 70s, stuff like Midnight Cowboy. Oh my God. I mean, can you imagine what an audience of 1930 would think of Midnight Cowboy, or even something like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? I mean, it freaked the fuck out. But our culture will, I think, a learned, educated, smart culture, eventually bad ideas evolve out of that culture. But it has to be a natural progression, because people have to understand. It happens when everybody decides, not because they're told to decide, but it's like they decide because it's the right thing to do. Because ultimately it's anti-human to victimize other people, I think. And again, that's what I think that's the most important thing. The more people, the best way we can help each other is to learn more about one another. When you realize that most people, like, you can pretty much sit down at a meal with anybody, and you realize when you start talking to anybody, okay, we do have more in common than we have different that are different about us. So why shouldn't we all just get along? I mean, I do believe that. It might be naive of me, but I do believe it. Duroc Media goes on to say, but ever since I was a kid, as UV stated before, the quality in the art of them is what I've always wanted. I also blame you, Rob, for getting me into it. Just kidding. I don't blame you, but you've influenced me. Look, I feel the same way, dude. I mean, my whole life I've collected action figures and models and stuff, and to me they were representations of the imaginative works of other people. And if I liked stories and things, when I was a kid, I started making stories up with my action figures, and now we're getting the kinds of licensed toys that I always wanted, because when I was a kid, they never made toys that were very good. You know, I mean, you talk about Thanos. I know I always show this, but look at this, man. I mean, this is a dope-ass toy. And if you look at this, like, yes, I used his angry head sculpt, but he did, like, he's got his battle head sculpt. But look at that's the head sculpt on there. I mean, that's incredible. And all this armor and the paint ops and everything. If you look, the damage to this armor, I mean, and the fact that even, you know, his fingers, I don't have knuckles and everything. I mean, these figures are amazing. The real question is at one point I've just got to stop. I've just got to be like, okay, no more. Because one day, I mean, I keep buying more because now I'm doing these shows with like Az and Justin, and I'm like, but one day I'm gonna have to stop buying figures, save up money for my retirement. Not that I ever want to retire. Duroc Media says, also, I'm surprised you don't have a Discord. Discord is a great way for the community to communicate on many different types of topics. Just an idea. I do have a Discord, but I never use it. You know, I haven't really delved into Discord, which I should. People keep telling me that I do. Chris Stenfenagel sends in a super chat and says, I just listened to the latest episode of Inglorious Trexperts. If Mark Altman finds the script Return to Genesis, please discuss it on a future show. What Chris is saying is it's actually not a script. It's only a treatment. I had it. And the Return to Genesis story was Harv Bennett's original idea for Star Trek 3. And it's very similar to what we got, although there's a couple of glaring differences that I lament not getting. One was after Star Trek 2 and the Genesis planet was created and the explosion, the Mutara Nebula of the Genesis device, Genesis has become, as the Admiral says in Star Trek 3, a galactic controversy, and Vulcan is pissed. And the Vulcans are demanding, they want to secede from the Federation. They think Genesis is monstrous, and how could this go on? So the difference is that they go to Vulcan instead of Sarek visiting Kirk's quarters on Earth. They go to Vulcan instead, and they find out what's going on. And Vulcan's like tearing itself apart. The Vulcans are demanding secession from the Federation. And another big difference is that there were no Klingons in Star Trek 3. It was Romulans. That's why there's a bird of prey. And unfortunately, they didn't fix it. You know, Leonard Nimoy, this is the problem sometimes. It's like nobody thought, well, right, it's a Romulan bird of prey. That's what they were designing. And then they changed it to Klingons. And what had happened was the Romulans go to investigate the Genesis planet, and they set up a mining operation because it's rich in dilithium. They've programmed dilithium into the Matrix, so there's a lot of dilithium. The Romulans set up a mining operation, and Feral Spock starts picking off the Romulans one by one. And it was just a more adult script, and I really liked it. I mean, they changed it, but that's sort of what was going on there. It was really good. Really, I really liked it. And it was a story treatment. So it hadn't been turned into a script yet, but it was his early story treatment. And I just liked it better. It just felt more adult. I've always thought Star Trek 3, it feels cheap. I think it does suffer from it being Leonard's first time out of the gate as a director. There are things in it I like, but it just feels like, aside from ILM's beautiful effects, it feels bargain basement. It always has to me. And I wish they had gone with the Return to Genesis idea. Dirac Media goes on to say, the reason I feel Hot Toys are amazing, aside from the perfect art, is they're so beautiful, but they represent a character for an emotion that we have at certain times in our life, and it's why I love them. I totally agree. Like, I was explaining to somebody the other day, maybe it was Mike Bodden, that I used to have, when I was working on Axanar, I used to have a big wall-sized case that I had sort of co-opted from Alec Peters. It was a custom-designed case. It was a beautiful case. It was probably 7 feet tall. And I had a lot of my, you can see it. There's a video on the Burnettwork channel. It's old now. I did it for the 100th episode of Heroes. We did like 300 episodes of Heroes. So the video is like 5 years old, but it was a video I made about my Hot Toys collection in my old office. And it's on the Hot Toys channel. I mean, it's on I think it's Rob's RMB's Hot Toys collection or something. And you can see it. I give a little preamble about why I love licensed figures, but you can see that case. And one of the things I loved about that case was my desk. I was sitting in this desk, and it was facing that shelf. And whenever I was working on something or trying to come up with, when I was directing at the time Axanar, to design shots and things, I just look at the figures the way I had them set up. I'm like, oh yeah, and it would just inspire me about movies, certain movies, and it would make me think about, oh, that scene or that. And it was very inspirational. And I want to do the same thing here with the Maju cases. I haven't had decent. I've got varying cases, and these I had these glass cases that were hexagonal, and they were for a specific office I had 15 years ago. But the Maju cases are big. The DX cases are big, and they fit together. And I want to basically create the kind of display that I used to have in my old office. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But I agree with you. I just like them. I like taking them out. I like having them on display. I like setting them up in various poses. So, yeah, indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, all of you across these 28 known galaxies, I'm going to bring an end to Robservations episode number 642. Wow, on our march to the 666th episode. Wow. Anyway, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank The Richard. I want to thank Darren Seeley, Bunyan Snipe, Louise X Sparrow. I like that X. Brian Hepburn. Wow, everyone's here today. Did I miss anybody? Is that everyone? I want to thank you. They are great moderators. I love them all, and they make the community what it is. I want to thank everybody for your outpouring of support for Mark Chure. May he rest in peace. Tomorrow, I am back on the John Campea show. I'm sure he's already seen the Snyder Cut, so he can talk about it. I have not. But yeah, we go into a Snyder Cut week. Snyder Cut and Falcon and Winter Soldier. finally something new to talk about. I don't have to scour. I've actually got topics. Although this is fun. This is a great show. I want to thank everybody for sending me letters and supporting the channel via super chats, and tips. If you want, you can go to the Burnettwork.net website and send me a letter free of charge. I'll read it on the air. Mike Bodden has been making new T-shirts, which are kind of cool. I got to go into my own merch store and see what's new. Buy a T-shirt. But anyway, so there you go. Again, back on the show tomorrow on the John Campy Show. I'll be back here in the afternoon, and I want to thank everybody for just being you. And on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, say it with me now, have a better day.